Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast, episode 714. Give me 40 seconds and I'm going to be playing a clip for you. It's Joe Rogan, Tim Kennedy, and they're talking about what's going on in Canada. And Joe Rogan actually is fearful that his podcast will not be able to be played in Canada, taking it out of the #1 spot that it's had for so long. And what they examine in this clip is whether what Canada is doing with their new podcasts and internet regulations is to uplift Canadian voices, or if it's just plain old censorship. And then I have a clip at the end of Justin Trudeau himself talking about gun control and why he's so against it. Really changed his tune since he's actually become prime minister since. Let's get into it.
In this video, this guy was talking about, well, it's 30 degrees out, so it's a nice day to go out and shoot. I was like, 30 degrees? I was like, oh, he's in Canada. All right. Okay, you communist. Using that bullshit metric system.
They really are right now, too.
They are. They're full on.
I never thought it would happen that fast.
Bro, it's so bad. I'm worried that my podcast is going to be censored in Canada because they just passed some new fucking legislation where they're allowed to... Like the whole idea is like it's under the guise of Canadian content, because they have a Canadian content law where they like you have to have a certain amount of Canadian based content on like the radio and television and stuff like that. You can't just have all stuff from all over the world, whatever people like. You have to have like a certain percentage of it has to be Canadian. And so under the guise of that, but really it's Trudeau trying to enforce censorship on podcasts because...
But they always do it in the cover and every dangerous freedom censoring group does it under this idea of they're doing it for the greater good.
Yes.
You know, it's like whether it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, or it's making sure that not disinformation or misinformation is being populated within the masses. It's always through this veil of, no, it's for your benefit. But you pull the veil back a little bit and it's just censorship.
It's just control.
Yeah, they're just trying to manipulate what information's available for people to try to base their opinions off of.
Have you ever seen that video of Trudeau from like 10 years ago? I mean, it might have been from more. It might have been like 2010. And he's talking about how he's opposed to... Do you got coffee in there?
Yeah.
Salute, my friend. Cheers. He's opposed to regulations with guns because he's like, regulations are the first step that they take, and the ultimate goal is to remove your gun. So we will not have regulations. Yeah. Like he's talking about this like in 2010 or 2011.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was following a playbook. Yeah. So he absolutely didn't believe that though, because he knew that within a decade he would be trying to confiscate every single gun that he could get his hands on and make transfer of pistols illegal. It's illegal.
Yeah.
If I have a pistol and I want to sell you a pistol, I cannot. That's it.
So wild. It's so wild how quick it changed over there. They used COVID to just enforce these sweeping legislations across all sectors. They don't have a free speech. They don't have a First Amendment over there. So they have hate speech laws, which can be interpreted so vaguely. And this is what Jordan Peterson was rallying against, like back when they had this bill that was set up to make people use someone's gender identity. And he was like, well, but what gender identity are you talking about? There's 78 current gender identities that someone can choose to identify with, including just complete nonsense, made-up words, and it's going to keep going. I don't know how many of them there are now. But he was like, the only way you enforce this is you're going to have to use force. And it's like the rule of law. Now it's like you're going to send armed thugs to arrest people for not using made-up words. Like this is where this goes. Especially Peterson, who knows so much about communism and so much about where the darkness that it leads down to.
Yeah, I love that he approaches it both from like a philosophical perspective and a historical perspective. You know, he is so well versed and knowledgeable in the argument that they're making from this position. This is where it leads to. And not only do we understand this in human nature, and here's a bunch of examples of it, but then also historically, here's a bunch of examples of it. So it makes it really hard to dispute what is really logical and rational. And okay, if you're here and they want to go from point A to point B, this is the process for them to get there.
Yes.
And you're like, yeah, another brilliant man that does a lot of good.
Well, you need a guy like him who has such a deep understanding of history. and also is a clinical psychologist who understands the human mind on a very, very deep level.
Yeah.
So he can explain things in a way that is almost impossible to refute. Like he's got all his bases covered when he discusses a subject, and he can fucking pull it off of his head. The guy uses no notes, and he just will quote things and explain things in the most complex manner and make it absorbable to everybody.
Yeah. He and I are we're in a
Man, oh man, I love that fact that he is calling it out. And Joe Rogan actually has to call it out, because this might mean that his podcast no longer gets played in a country that has about, 38 million people. It's an entire country. And all of a sudden he won't have those. I mean, even beyond downloads, it's just a whole country of people that won't be exposed to all the guests that he gets to bring on. You know, he has people on, presidential candidates. I wonder if he'll ever have a Canadian politician on. Imagine him and Trudeau. That'd be a wild little podcast. I'd watch it. But it's straight up censorship, and it's under the guides, exactly what Tim Kennedy was saying. They're really trying to position it like it's gonna be better for all of the Canadian creators, when in reality, and I've brought this up before, there were some Canadian creators that I follow that are really in tune with Canadian politics, because anytime something happens with Trudeau, they're the ones that I learn it from. I learn the exact situation. I know what's going on because of them. All of them are gone from my feed now, completely gone, because they are constantly pushing against the party that's in power. The writing's on. It's not even the writing's on the wall. It's very clear. It's very clear. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it myself, trying to follow Canadian creators. So it gets difficult. But now let's get into the next video. We got Justin Trudeau talking about why he's against gun control and censorship. Let's go. This is from Colin Noir's page. Let's go.
Here is that the first step towards registering your guns is just the first step towards taking away guns from everyone. That's never going to happen, because here in Canada we have a culture that has grown up with guns and that respects the need to go out into the wilderness and shoot things from time to time.
Now fast forward 10 years later, and he's saying this.
Effective immediately. It is no longer permitted to buy, sell, transport, import, or use military-grade assault weapons in this country. To protect law-abiding gun owners from criminal liability until they can take steps to comply with this new law, there will be a 2-year amnesty period, and we will legislate fair compensation.
Now I can see someone saying, well, assault weapon.
Now, to be fair, to be completely fair, Trudeau actually, he did this whole thing before he was a part of the WEF. As soon as he joined the WEF, I mean, you know, he has to get with the program. He went through their whole schooling. He's a young global leader, you know. Before, he was just some kid, just talking about freedom and liberty. And no. WEF clears all that out for you when you join the ranks. It's very interesting, man. I can't wait to see what happens with Joe Rogan's podcast. And honestly, I hope it does get censored in Canada, because that will be a huge story. Huge story. He has a huge following in Canada. There's millions of people that listen to his podcast every single day. They're going to start to get up in arms, and hopefully that happening causes enough of an uproar that some kind of change happens. That's the biggest hope you can have. Because otherwise, if it all just goes without a hitch, the censorship that all of these creators are going through there is still going to continue. It's wild. It's wild. And for Tim Kennedy, a Green Beret, somebody who is for the people, but he also works for the military. And he's made that very clear, for him to even look at Canada. And instead of going along and being like, their government has to do what they have to do, instead of saying that, which is what he would say for, the U.S., he looks at it and says, no, they're communists. They're turning into communists. That really does say something. Really does say something. And a lot of people will shoo that away and say it's not true. Yeah, it's even more, it's not super simple, but just find someone from Cuba and ask them about it. Just be like, what does this seem like to you? This is what they're doing. What does that seem like? And right away they will tell you. That's how it starts. They're just in the beginning. 5 years from now, it's going to be just like Cuba. That's what I think. That's what I've heard. I've heard that from Cubans a lot. So let me know what you think in the comment section about what's going on in Canada. If you're Canadian, let me know, what are you going to do if Joe Rogan's podcast becomes censored? What are you going to do? Actually, you know what? Maybe don't tell me what you're going to do. Maybe don't tell me what you're going to do. I don't want to see you get locked up in the gulag or anything like that. Anyways, guys, that is the episode. Like for more and the best Rogan clips. I put that up against any channel. I was going to bang the table, but someone said it's too loud on their subwoofers when I do it. Put that up against any channel. Like and subscribe. I'm out.